lounging, son.
Welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name is Ryan, and back with me again, same J Royale, dude. We went through Dishoom 1. Now we're gonna go through Dishoom 2. Can't wait to jump into this with you, man.
Yeah, same. Looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
So let's talk this cover. So we talked a lot last time about your mixed media and stuff, digital, traditional. This is a new character. This character was not in #1, so this is
That's right.
This one.
Yeah, this is a brand new character for people who already read the first book. So this is a character named Hourglass, and he's an assassin. Visually, he was very much inspired by this 1960s Italian comics anti-hero named Diabolic. And there was this really cool thing happening with comics in Italy in the 60s where while America was seeing like the Silver Age and like the Marvel Age of comics coming, and like you have your Spider-Man and your Hulk and all of these people are being introduced to the readership. In Italy, what happened was they had anti-heroes and criminal protagonists, and that's what took off. And Diabolic started that trend, and he was like this master thief who like basically dressed like a ninja, and he would have he'd be armed with a knife, if anything, like usually unarmed, but would have a knife on occasion. And I just loved the simplicity of the design and that sleek silhouette. And it reminded me a lot of another thing that come out of the 60s, which was all the like Hanna-Barbera animation designs that Alex Toth had done. So that was the visual starting point for this character. And I guess like I just was on a 60s kick. Maybe it was a holdover from working with Rocco Jerome on Ghost Agents, but I was also thinking like, okay, well, what else was going on in the 60s? And you have like the James Bond movies. And so I wanted to have him on the front cover here in kind of a James Bondish pose with the gun. And so that's where all of that came from. And I wanted it to feel like a painted cover of like one of those 60s Italian comic books. And so I achieved the image by drawing on copy paper with colored pencil and then putting tracing paper over that and then inking on the tracing paper, because it doesn't dry properly when you do that, and it leaves kind of almost like this painted texture.
Okay.
And so like it's kind of like this hazy quality to it that I really liked. And I drew all the elements separate. So like the figure is on one paper, that hovering ball next to him is on another paper, and then like the cityscape behind him is on another paper, and then it's all composited together in Photoshop. But that's where that came from. I can show you the originals here. This is you see that's the tracing paper version of the character marker. And the concept sketch, that's all I drew for my idea, because it's just for me, as long as I understood what I was doing.
Yeah.
Didn't matter. So it's a very crude sketch there, but got the job done.
Yeah, so like just off top, like this issue, like you said, the first one took you years to do. This one you did in about a year and a half. This is after everybody's like, especially like people in the group like that we're both a part of, like people are starting to like, you're building a fan base is what I'm trying to say, right? Like, so people I know, I was excited for the next issue of Dishoom, and I'm excited what comes after this as well. So I was definitely stoked to see that you got another one out. There's some holdover from the last one, but also this new character, Hourglass, who I really dig. I love the design of him. And I also love assassins. Anything with an assassin is like right up my alley.
Right. Yeah, it's funny. Like as soon as book 1 was done, people ask, well, when's book 2 coming out? And it was like, okay, I gotta strike now while people still want it. And so like I worked really hard to get that out in a timely manner. And I think like 2 days after the second book was out, when's 3 coming out? It's like, like I need
it sucks, but like that's what everybody always says, and it's like, and I've heard, I don't know where I've heard it, but I've heard like cartoonists say like, man, let the project breathe, let it have a life of its own before you're asking me, what am I doing next? But it's like, I feel like from a fan perspective, it's like, well, I'm just a fan of your work, so I want to know how much longer until I can get some more stuff,
I mean, we've all been there, right? Like watching like Breaking Bad back when it was on TV, and then like having to wait a whole week for the next episode was brutal. Like
or in between seasons, even
like in between seasons, forget it. That
it's
like
the worst.
God.
Yeah.
It's really like to start rewatching stuff. So I mean, I really appreciate that there was so much interest, but I definitely I work kind of slow, and I need more time. And while we're on the subject of like letting the project breathe, I might as well mention now. I have another book coming out before Dishoom 3. So I took a little break from this. It's not done yet, but it was originally planned to be about 30 pages. And then I kept adding to it and adding to it and adding to it. And now it's planned to be 80 pages. And of those 80 pages, I have 60 done. So
Nice.
it's
Oh
moving
yeah.
pretty fast. It's pretty good, but that's going to come out before Dishoom 3. So I'm sorry to keep everybody waiting on 3, but it is coming still. But
I'm fine with
it's gonna
that
be
as
soon.
long as we're getting something else from you.
Yes.
I'm down. That's awesome. 80 pages? Hell yes, dude.
I'm really excited about that one. I can't wait when that's done. I gotta talk to you again about it because that's the most fun I've ever had making comics. This project. The
Oh,
current
dude,
one.
yeah, we'll get on. We'll talk about it. We'll go through the book too, dude. Just like we're doing this. So I'm excited, dude. I love
Sure.
this too. The at the top, the snake, the frog, and then the spider, and then you have hourglass at the top. All
Right.
saying like, venomous, toxic, dangerous, lethal. A warning, a dare. I love this, dude. It's awesome.
Yeah, like even though like visually and thematically this is so different from issue one's Black Tortoise and White Rabbit, you definitely get a sense of that poetic cadence here.
Mhm.
That's something I think about a lot, like the rhythm of the story and like even the way like the panels are broken down, like to start with like higher, more rapid paced panel, then like it starts to slow down a little. So you have 4, 3, 1. And those are all things I think a lot about. Yeah. So the animal pictures, they were done with marker originally on white paper. And then I figured I could just add the colors later digitally. My original plan for the story was to make it like pure black and white, flat black and white, and then like flat red, yellow, blue. And I was not able to stick to that. It's not really my strength to work that way. So I ended up deviating from it, but that was the original plan, to make it like a really stark, high contrast story. And on the page on the left here, you see him breaking into this guy's, I guess, high-rise apartment, and he's in front of this painting that's reminiscent of Piet Mondrian. That was one of the points of inspiration behind the color palette for the story, was those primary colors from Mondrian paintings with all the squares. It's funny, like doing a commentary on this. I realized like, oh, I'm just kind of like saying what's happening on the page sometimes. And like, have you
That's
ever
fine,
seen
dude. It's fine, dude.
you ever see the commentary that like Schwarzenegger did for Total Recall?
No, but I want to now.
It's amazing because he offers no insight on anything. He's just watching the movie and describing what's on the screen. So it's like,
I gotta hear that, dude.
like you get the sense like he hasn't even thought about the movie since he was in it. And
Yeah.
like, and so he's like, oh, here I am running around with the towel on my head. This guy, he has a face on his tummy. And like, it's like, it's all he's offering you. And it's like,
Yeah.
no insights. I hope I'm not going quite that
You're
far.
you're not, you're not. I like this too, like a view from inside his mask, and then you have the opposite panel with the hourglass. I like that, the page composition right there.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
The
And
close
then
up of
it's
the
mirrored.
eyes.
Right. My wife modeled for that last panel where
For this,
yeah,
that's
mostly for the hand. That's what I needed. It was just for like lighting reference on the hand. And like in issue one, like whenever it was necessary, I ended up modeling for everything. And then by book 2, I was married and had access to another model. So that made things a lot easier.
yeah. This is something too that I really dug, that you put in the breakdown of the costume, the weapons. Like this like speaks to your like design acumen too, I think. The
Oh,
way
thanks.
you broke this down.
Yeah, it's kind of a cheat. Like, so we mentioned him in the previous video too, but Michael Fitzgerald Troy, he pointed out, he looked at this and he's like, oh, you did paper dolls. And it's like, yeah, that's totally what this is. Like, it's very similar to like, because that's even how I created a lot of the images. Like, I drew the figure without the sweater, and then like I put tracing paper on top, and then I drew the sweater. So like it very much is like a paper doll of this hourglass character. And it's a real cheat because like you see all this text and it looks like a technical diagram, but nothing's really explained technologically. Because this is a sticking point I have with comics. I like when we don't know how the science behind all of it works. A lot of the times I like when it's more in the fantasy realm, even when it's like dressed up to look like sci-fi. I don't need to know the science of a lightsaber to enjoy seeing one.
So
I
kind
don't
of like what Hickman does when he has his charts and graphs, you could live without those.
right.
I
Yeah.
guess. So
So like
at a certain point, I started like, I need to pass this over. I can't, like I just want to read the comic. I don't want to read 10 pages of graphs and text.
oh
Nothing
yeah, I
against.
wouldn't go
I
that
mean,
far.
I love Hickman's writing, but sometimes, yeah, it's like I don't need to know everything, man. Let my imagination kind of fill in the gaps.
And there are exceptions, because I feel that way too. I 100% agree with you. But then like when you see Paul Pope breaking down all the little details of the Batman costume, I was totally on board.
That's cool. That
I was
kind of stuff
totally
is
on board for that one.
yeah. Well, I also really love Paul Pope, so
Yeah, it's really strong.
I'll give him a pass. So
All
this
right,
is
so
another cool story, dude. I love this one. Yule Crew.
Yule Crew, yeah. So like this, so I lied earlier when I said I did it in a year and a half. This story was done mostly in 2015. I forgot about that. Yeah, so this was actually supposed to be in issue 1. And the only reason it got bumped to issue 2 was it had kind of an immature joke, and my wife was just like, "Nah, you can bump this to the next one." And like, she's kind of like a behind the scenes editor here, uncredited editor, because I really respect her input that she offers. Like her reasoning, I can't give it away without spoiling something that's going to come up in a future issue. But her reasoning for switching this story to this book, and the Moondog story was supposed to be in issue 2. She flip-flopped those, and like there was a really good reason why, but I can't say why yet.
Okay.
But yeah, that's thanks to her editorial input. But then that painting of the UFO on the left, that I did like I think last year. So that was the only part of this story that was done recently.
Okay.
The art here is all digital. I'm pretty sure. I don't think there's anything drawn on paper here, except for maybe like rough sketches for those paintings. We mentioned while covering issue 1, something I really liked about Ashley Wood's work was you would see these really simple inked storytelling pages, and then like after a certain pacing, you'd get a full splash page painting. And in his case, it would be an oil painting, and in my case, it's a digital painting. And I thought it would just be an interesting way to introduce the characters. So you get like a page of story, and then like that character says or does something, and then you turn the page, and then you get an intro to that character, who that character is, what his deal is. And
I love this name, dude. Krampus Kane, demonic sadist, punisher of the naughty, short temper. I love that, dude. It's awesome.
Thanks a lot. Yeah,
Yeah.
all of this stuff was inspired by Norse mythology and my fascination with Christmas iconography and symbolism. So like you have Krampus, you have Santa Claus equated with Odin, and here he goes by Woden. And Donar is essentially Thor from Norse mythology. So that's where all of that came from. Yeah, so it all built up to just a pee joke.
I think this made me laugh out loud. It's rare, so kudos to you, man, because like there's not a lot of humor in comics. Like I think I was talking about this with Kyle Starks the other day when I was talking with him about some of his work, because his latest book is more of a horror book, and I feel like that's more of I think one of his best-selling books. But humor is so hard to do in comics, and I think that like it's different to read a joke than to hear it out loud. But this one made me laugh. Like I actually laughed out loud, and that does not happen often. So
I really appreciate that. It's funny, like the different like delivery systems of these stories are going to impact how people take them in and how it resonates with them. And that's something I always felt about like action scenes. Like action in a movie will grab me. Fighting in a comic never really gets me excited the same way. There are exceptions, like every now and then you'll get like a full-on like Kirby inspired Simonson slugfest that'll be like, whoa, like this is like really impactful. Or maybe like in the 90s, like Superman fighting Doomsday. But with those few exceptions in mind, like usually like a fight scene is kind of whatever. I just want to turn the page and get back to the story now, because like it doesn't grab me. Like the same fight scene in a movie would be great, but in a comic just doesn't feel the same. And humor is one of those things too, where it's hard to really translate it into just the writing, because like you don't get to control the delivery of the punchline, the reader does. And so like the timing of it there's so much up in the air. And while mentioning it's hard to do, we got to mention our mutual friend James Windsor Smith. His book Outstanding Achievement Presents Papa Balloon and Cactus, that book made me laugh out loud on the first page, and continually made me laugh throughout. Like he's he could not be more perfect for a humor comic. Like he can really, he's one of the best examples of like guys today who can show you how it should be done.
He's got a good sense of humor for sure.
He's a very funny guy.
Yeah. All right, next story, you got Whispers from Beyond.
Yeah, Whispers from Beyond. Let's see what I got here. So most of the artwork in this one was watercolor. I had like a notebook and I was doing watercolor paintings in them and then photographing them and then digitally painting on top of that. So I have actual paintings of all of those things on the left page there.
Yeah.
I think a big starting point here was, you know, like all the Frank Frazetta fantasy novel covers.
Yes.
Now Frazetta is way up here, and like to strive for that level of greatness is a big undertaking. So I set my sights a little lower. And if you've ever seen his prelim work,
yeah, dude, I got that new Frazetta book. So like I mean,
oh yeah,
yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, I have an episode where I actually go through basically the entire book with Sarah Frazetta's granddaughter, who
oh, you know, I saw that.
So
yeah.
I mean, that book's beautiful. If you're a Frazetta fan, it's like you need to own the book. I mean, it's just phenomenal. Getting to see like the reproduction of the art, like the scans they got, amazing, dude. Especially
That's
as an
so
artist
cool.
yourself, I think like definitely something you would love. But
Yeah, I mean, it's especially important. I remember you saying earlier that you and your wife bonded on Frazetta. That was
yeah,
like
that's true.
really early on, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Extra meaningful for you. But yeah, like Frazetta is just so good. Where it's like, if my finals could look half as good as his roughs, I'm thrilled. And so like that's like the bar I was shooting for. I was looking at his prelim drawings where like the paper's like all yellow. I don't know if he was using newsprint or what, but they were done with like
he used
colored
everything.
pencil and watercolor.
He used everything.
Yeah.
Dude. There's like I think he drew on the
Coffee
like kind of like
stains.
what you did. Yeah, back of a bag,
Yeah.
dude. Like it was crazy, like seeing it. And it's like you could see where like it was ripped. Like there's in that book, there's a page of notebook paper, and you can see where it's like torn, like it's torn. It's not even the full page. It's just like a little chunk of paper. Like it's nuts, dude.
Even like I remember seeing some of his prelims that just had masking tape, like
yes,
masking tape all over them, just holding the paper together. But yeah, those really capture my imagination too. Like as good as his finals are, like the prelims are just as interesting.
Agreed.
Oh, and sorry, the lettering on the sword name there in the previous page, Grimcalt, and like the title lettering for Whispers from Beyond.
Yeah.
It's not a font. I wanted to do this black letter, Gothic lettering inspired kind of feel. And so like I went on Illustrator and I made all these little squares and triangles and just moved them around and copied and pasted them until I got all the letters fitting just the way I wanted them to fit. It's a very time-consuming process, but hopefully it was worth it.
Yeah, it looks great.
Yeah, so you have a magic weapon here. The main character here is this immortal barbarian who over time eventually becomes the CEO of this company. And it's not entirely clear what that company does yet. That'll be revealed later.
And I like that the building right here, that's the sword going down, right?
Oh, I guess it could be. I hadn't thought of that.
I don't know. It looks kind of like.
Let's go with that. Let's go with that. That's cool.
I mean, that's
I did it on purpose.
Yeah, that's what it looked like to me. You know, like with the symbolism, it looks like a sword going down the center of that building. I love it.
Oh, that's so funny. I used a lot of the buildings. I use real buildings as a starting point. So that's a total happy accident. There's just some other building in Midtown Manhattan that I used as a reference there. And that office door with the magic bubbles coming out of it, that office door, and the reference was a photo of my bathroom. So that's some real fancy office.
Dude, nothing is wasted in life, man. Everything's a reference.
That's right. And so for the middle point of the book, you have this character introduction for Casper Cole, this immortal barbarian, and a little description of him and his background. Again, you could see the influence of 70s fantasy novel covers.
Definitely can see it for sure. I love that you have so many different characters in like your universe of stuff that they could all easily be the main. I mean, like its own book. Like if you ever wanted to, you could just do a book on him. You could just do a book on, Hourglass and everything. So
If I had the attention span for it, that's 100% true. I think I
yeah,
need to jump around or
yeah.
yeah. It's so now this is the final story of this book, Diamonds and Disappointment. Again, this title was custom lettering. It's mostly made with squares and kind of quarter circles. And
Okay.
this is going to bring back the character Helga Hale from the first book. She was a character who started out as a redhead and then goes through this transformation. And by the end of it, she has like a more superhero-ish physique and pink hair. And going back to the previous page, you have that diamond monster. There's this unnamed diamond monster here. The visuals here, you see how his ears stick out and his nose sticks out. He kind of looks like a snowman.
Yes.
It's based on the description from 1973 alien abduction case in Pascagoula, Mississippi, where these two men claim to have seen a UFO come down, and these two beings come out and they have like these pointy stalks for ears and the pointy nose. And that visual really captured my imagination. And even though the rest of the design of the character doesn't really resemble what they saw something with like elephant skin, and this guy's made of diamonds. They have different builds. I don't know. It's one of those things where it was just so weird. I had to put it in. It was so weird. I couldn't forget about it. Couldn't stop thinking about it. And so that's why he looks the way he does. Here in the beginning of the story, you have a sculpture garden that was very much inspired by the Storm King Art Center in New York, where you can go and like walk around this beautiful park and like there's all these giant sculptures. And I just thought that would be kind of a cool setting for these characters to have a little mini fight. And so you see Helga Hale from the first book now in a very different role, kind of like a more of a superheroine role. And she's just trying to figure out what this diamond guy's deal is. And he refuses to talk and starts fighting.
Yeah, I love the choreography in here, the action like this. You can feel that punch.
Oh, thanks. And the sound effects here, the onomatopoeia. So like that one says boom with a H after the B, and then like on the next page you see a fatak. Both of those are very Indian inspired. Like whenever a brown person is flipping through this book, they like immediately light up when they see those, because like it's just like a different cultural thing. Like they still work as a sound effect here too, but like just the other day, like my wife's cousin was looking at it for the first time and he like started laughing when he saw fadak, because like that's like a sound effect you would use for like a firework, like a fireworks going off. And so like he knew exactly what that would mean. And like if you don't know that, you don't lose anything. But for people in the know, it's just kind of like this little bonus, like, oh, that's cool. Yeah, all of those pages on were done with like the usual brown packing paper, colored pencils. Issue 2 as a whole, I was like more in the zone, like knowing what works for me and what doesn't. There's a lot less of like traditional looking ink in this book. And so it's a lot of mixed media, a lot of painting. And you see the flying car here, the Surya 5 flying car. You might be able to recognize it, but the starting point here was the Ford Aerostar.
Okay.
Because like this is
I
one of
see
those
it. Oh, yeah.
things, like when I was a little kid and like, my friend's dad had a Ford Aerostar and like we were like 5 or 6 and we thought like, oh, like it looks so futuristic. It's got that name Aerostar. Like it sounds like a spaceship. And like, like the idea of like what the future was or what it would be in the 80s and early 90s and like what it is now is so different. And
Yeah.
like I love that retrofuturism. And so like even though there's a lot of like futuristic elements in these stories, they're all almost like an older take on it. Yeah, like it's something you'd see like in the Jetsons, like with their Googie style architecture, and it's like the 1950s idea of what the future would be. And
Yes.
I think a lot of the stuff in this story shows you like the 1980s version of what the future would be. We talk about like storytelling and movies many times, but that splash page on the left, if this were a movie, that would be like an opening credits montage, I think, where you would just
Yes.
see like the camera pan over all the different articles, all the different magazine clippings to show you the passage of time. Like this is what's changed about this character since issue 1, because it doesn't pick up right where issue 1 left off. Some time has passed. I'm not sure how much, but it's definitely been a bit. And like you see, like she's been taking action to take on world hunger. She's on the cover of like a fashion magazine. She like helped arrest some criminals. there's all kinds of stuff here.
Yeah, this is a great that does sound like it would be an opening montage. I think that's awesome. I assume like since it stopped with 25 with the booze, you know, that and it's 30. I assumed it's like she's 30 now. That's kind of where
Yeah,
my mind went.
she's
Or in
definitely
her
at least
30s.
30. Yeah,
Yeah.
at least 30, maybe exactly 30. But and Sven Seven is kind of like a proud father in that moment. Like,
Yeah.
you know, he's the one clipping all those magazines, and you know, he's kind of like her surrogate father. And this is like one of those meta things where the page on the left here, all those dense dialogue balloons, basically the gist of what she's saying is she feels like she's doing all this work and putting all this time in and not going anywhere or seeing any progress. And that is exactly how I felt while working on that page, because that page and the page, like the fight scene before it,
Mm-hmm.
I must have drawn and redrawn those pages from the ground up like 3 or 4 times.
Oh wow.
And like it just drove me nuts. And like I just felt like I was going in circles. And I think that that even worked its way into the dialogue, where she's like, I feel like I'm going in circles. And like
Yeah.
so that frustration kind of bled through. And Sven Seven at the end of this page, her surrogate father, like basically invites her out, like, hey, you know, maybe you should take a break here. Like step back, take a break, and you know, we'll go to this coffee shop. So that coffee shop on the top of the next page, the exterior is based on a coffee shop that was local to me in Queens back at my old apartment. And we changed the name. This is like, this is where I probably overdo it. And this will explain why these books take so long for me to put out. The page where you have all the magazine clippings and everything,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not half-assing it. I'm designing a masthead for a magazine. I'm designing an entire grid for a newspaper. I'm like doing the whole thing, like all of it, like all the actual work that would be involved for those things. And the same thing happened with this coffee shop. Like I needed to know the actual, not just the name, but it would need to have its own logo, the Mystic Mind Cafe. And like, you know, it's like, oh, well, what if I use this setting later? I have to have all this groundwork laid in. And so like it got to the point where I drew the whole block and just cropped it in for this shot. There's
Oh my
shops,
God.
there's shops above it, there's shops to the side of it. It's all over the place. And like it's just this really expansive universe. Because I thought maybe, you know, in a future book, if I want to have the same setting, I could use the same exterior shot, kind of like they would do in old sitcoms. You know, like they have their interior set, but the exterior
Right.
shot was always just the same image. And I thought,
Yep.
what if I could get away with that? So if I just work really hard and make sure the exterior image is good, like I can just stick to it.
Reuse it. Yeah. No, that's
Yeah.
awesome. I mean, that's crazy, dude. I mean, like I already said it, but your logos, like you're so good at designing logos, and it's clear every time. Like you're making up stores, you know, you're
Yeah.
like logos for magazines. Like that's awesome.
There's and to speak for like it paying off. So like in the first book, there was a fake whiskey called Rose Gold Unicorn.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look closely next to that coffee shop on that page, there is a liquor store. And on the window of the liquor store is the Rose Gold Unicorn logo.
That's
Yeah. And
dude,
so
you're nuts. You're crazy, dude.
it's, you know, I wanted it to feel like a world. Like if that whiskey existed in the last book, well, that brand still exists in this book, and they would have it at that liquor store. So yeah, all of these pages in the coffee shop, my wife was the lighting reference for Helga Hale. So like she put on like a trench coat and boots and wore my scarf. She put on some shades, and like we did this whole photo shoot there.
Nice.
I modeled for Sven Seven. I was the robot. Yeah, so this spread, this is like a story within a story, and Sven Seven is telling Helga this story about this sun god and this moon god. And the third panel on that page on the left, it shows like these different staffs with different animal heads. There's like a wolf head and a panther head and a rabbit head. And it's basically saying like, oh, you know, in some versions of this story, the moon god carries a wolf staff. And in other versions of the story, there's a panther staff. And in other versions, it's a rabbit. That was just something I wanted to put in because like you have like different contradictory versions of different mythological stories. And it's something you see a lot in comic book continuity. Like
Mm-hmm.
Golden Age Superman is not the same as John Byrne's Superman. They're different
Right.
things. But also like when it comes to like a more spiritual thing, I feel like those kinds of phenomena are going to present themselves differently to different people or be perceived differently by different people. like say if you were to have some kind of near-death experience and you see something, well, and then like I have a near-death experience, there might be some parallels, but there's going to be some differences too that are very specific to us. And maybe that's because it's pulling from our interior library of images, our own like picture library, visual vocabulary, and like it's just choosing to manifest from what it's finding there already in our heads.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe a little woo-woo way to look at it, but
No, it's, I mean, yeah, I get it. I totally get it. And
even though we saw, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say it even could be like in terms of like, you know, parallel Earths, parallel worlds, you know, like on this world
Yeah,
it's this, on this world it's this, you know, like
totally. Yeah, maybe they all exist, right?
yeah,
So like even though we met Chandra in the first book, he looks a little different in this book in that like he has a metal hand that we didn't see in the previous book. In the
right.
previous book, like there was a character carrying a wolf staff. Here, there's a character carrying a like a panther staff, and so it's kind of take what you like. You know, choose like which continuity works best for you. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not gonna like give you a clear cut answer on these things because I find that stuff boring. And so more coffee shop scenes, these were really fun to do. It's funny, like when you work on these things, like they're so time intensive and so labor intensive that whenever I see the images, I remember exactly where I was and what I was doing, like when I was working on those specific images. And
Right.
I have very clear memory of these pages specifically. I was on the couch and drawing these on a clipboard on brown packing paper while my wife was watching Selling Sunset, and I just wanted to blow my brains out. Like, and so like all I can think of is horrible reality TV when I see this spread.
That's like a fun.
This was very much inspired by like fashion sketches.
Mhm.
I always found interesting. It's not necessarily a strength of mine, but it's definitely something I enjoy playing with. That idea, like where they have like these long, lean, flowy figures, and it's a little more abstract. It's more about silhouette. It's a lot of overlap with comic book convention and fashion design, like people being many, many, many more heads taller than they should be in reality. And yeah, this is something that like it's not really. I didn't draw any attention to it in the story, but you see like on that page where there's the bulletin board of all the clippings, every time you see Helga in a costume, like it's a different outfit, slightly different. Like it's almost the same. It's got the same symbol. It's got the same color palette, but there are different outfits. And so like, it's another way to show the passage of time. Like, oh, well, she had different costumes at different times. She's still trying to find the costume she likes best. And this is the one she ultimately lands on.
And then you get the close up of all the different pages.
Right, right. It's like if I'm going to spend all my time doing all that, I better showcase it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, dude, another great issue, man.
Oh, thanks a
And then
lot.
you got a little preview of 3, what we can expect to.
Yeah, yeah. And we mentioned Frazetta earlier, and this 100% the spread is based on Frazetta's work.
Yeah, I know
Obviously.
the painting is, it's a woman
Mhm.
in the original, right? I can't remember the name of
Well,
the
yeah,
painting, but I know what you're talking about.
it's a weird painting actually. I forgot the title of it, but it started as a Tarzan cover. And you know how he notoriously would repaint his oil paintings?
Yeah.
So it was like Tarzan looking at the moon, and then like he painted Tarzan right out of it, changed the color palette of the painting a bit, and then added a woman standing on a tree branch. And like, so now the old painting doesn't even exist. And
Yeah. Crazy.
it's kind of a shame. But yeah, this is Moondog, who was introduced in the first book in the story, The Sword of Chandra. His name was not revealed in that story because I couldn't decide how to spell his name. And ultimately, I decided on Moon hyphen Dog, kind of the way Spider-Man is hyphenated.
Yeah.
And so this shows that he'll be back, and he's got a new costume here. He's wearing the fur of the wolf he killed in that first story.
Yeah, dude, this is awesome. Another great issue, dude. Like super stoked to be able to go through this with you. I can't wait for that book you're talking about. I'm fine waiting for Dishoom 3 if that means another book is coming out. So very excited. And yeah, dude, thank you so much for doing this with me. I'm had a
Yeah, thank
blast.
you. I really appreciate it, and I'm excited too. The new book that we talked about, it's 60 pages into an 80-page book, and it's It centers around a character I stumbled onto when I was in college and dusted off after, oh God, like 20 years now. So that's gonna be really fun to share with everybody when it's ready.
Oh,
And
yeah.
just a reminder for anyone who wants to check out the books and other merchandise, I got the books and some original art. I do envelope sketches that I sell. You can find those at etsy.com/shop/Sam J Royale, and other merchandise like t-shirts and tote bags and whatnot you can find at dishoom.creator-spring.com.
Yeah, and I'll drop all those links down below for everybody listening and watching. And Sam, once again, dude, thank you so much for doing this with me. I always love talking comics with you. Loved going through Dishoom 2 with you. If you haven't checked out the other episode, I went through issue 1 with Sam also, so go check that out. And yeah, dude, we'll do this again next time you got another book coming out, dude.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate it.
All right, man.